boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of episode 1 and 2 of Creature Commandos, which is the first installment inside of the revamped, rebooted DC universe under the guidance of one James Gunn. How is everybody doing out there in the world? I hope that this episode finds everybody doing glorious as the month of December has started and we are steamrolling towards 2025. We have just a couple of weeks left in this year, and man, this was a blink and you missed it year, huh? But hey, what way or what better way is there to kind of close out 2024 with so much great television, so much great content from Marvel with the addition of Deadpool and Wolverine, X-Men 97 and Agatha All Along, and DC even with the Penguin. And from a geek standpoint, I should say, but we have gotten a lot of good content. And Creature Commandos was high on my list because of the I guess this being the start of the new DC universe or the DCU, and James Gunn's vision of this universe of DC Comics and what direction we're gonna go in. I know this is animated, but it's canon, so it matters, and we're not going to get anything live action until July when we get Superman. But this is the unofficial start. Creature Commandos is an adult animated television show which is on Max, and all episodes will drop on Thursdays. But they blessed us with the first two to get us hooked in. The premise of this show, it focuses on a black ops team of monsters assembled by Amanda Waller. All 7 episodes are written by James Gunn. The show is starring or providing their voices Indira Varma, Shane Gunn, Alan Tudyk, Zoe Chow, David Harbour, and Frank Grillo. And the good thing about this, the way, well, allegedly, according to James Gunn, unless it changes, the voice actors of animated shows and movies that will come out of DC Studios from this point on will also be those characters in live action. And so it won't be Kevin Reed providing a voice in the movie and Robert Pattinson as Batman in the movies. No, well, you know, the Batman is his own separate thing from the DCU, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But it's very interesting in the aspect of David Harbour. David Harbour, who you may know from Stranger Things and that god awful Hellboy movie, but he is not only a part of this show and officially a part of the DCU, but he's also a part of the MCU simultaneously. He has a role coming up in the Thunderbolts as the Red Guardian. He'd already played the Red Guardian in Black Widow, and he'll be reprising that role in the Thunderbolts. So it's funny to see him or hear him in this role, and he's a part of the DCU as well as being part of the MCU. And it's all good. It doesn't kill me. Of course, the character he's playing, it's not like they're similar in any shape, form, or fashion. As a matter of fact, they're polar opposites of each other. But this is a very interesting show. The full disclosure, as much as I'm a DC Comics nut, I'm currently reading the Court of Owls saga in the Batman. I'd never read it, and I wanted to read it because I have a strong suspicion that the Batman sequel is going to dive into the Court of Owls. I could be 100% wrong, but I still wanted to read it. I've been wanting to read it since it came out. But I am a DC Comics nut. All comics, Marvel, whatever, independent, Image Comics and all that. But DC was my jam growing up. I never read Creature Commandos. Matter of fact, I didn't know what Creature Commandos were. And when they announced this as being the kickoff point for the new DCU, I was like, well, okay. What is that? It was so out of the blue, out of nowhere. And that's James Gunn. I mean, James Gunn took the Guardians of the Galaxy, which nobody knew of. You knew of them if you're in the comics, but not too many people read Guardian of the Galaxy comic books. It's a very, very slim minority that have read those comic books. But he made those films for the MCU, and you can argue those are three of the best movies in the MCU. You can argue it. I'm not gonna I'm 100% agree with it, but it's bloody close. It's definitely probably the top three trilogies in the MCU when you really think about it, going through the whole MCU. But James Gunn has a really interesting track record, to put it kindly, when it comes to these type of things. I actually enjoyed the Suicide Squad. I loved the Suicide Squad. I thought it was one of the best things to come out of the DCEU when it was a thing. I loved it. At the very least, it was an improvement from Suicide Squad, that came out a few years earlier. But I loved this Suicide Squad. I liked what he did. He kind of took that same vibe of the Guardians of the Galaxy, that kind of tone, comedic tone, yet has heart, and made something I thought was pretty special. And I enjoyed it. And so for him to take over this whole universe and be the figurehead at the top to save DC, I was a little skeptical, even though I'm a huge fan of his. And so this show was going to make or break me going forward. And I must say, I was impressed. I was impressed with these first two episodes. It's not what you would consider a bubblegum cheery show. It is funny. There's a lot of comedy in it. It's your typical James Gunn style of comedy, which is right up my alley. So of course, naturally, I enjoyed it. The one thing that not one thing, I have a few things that I have a problem with, but one of the major things that stuck out to me is we learned early on that some of the previous films in the DC EU, not previous, but the ones that James Gunn was involved with, whether it's Peacemaker, I forgot to include that when I was talking about James Gunn in the DC universe, Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad, they're canon. They are canon now. They will continue on in this new universe. And so technically this isn't the first property in this new DC universe. And so it was kind of like, okay, now I figured that because they always said that Viola Davis will return as Amanda Waller, which I never had a problem with because who else can play her that good? I mean, she is born to play Amanda Waller. So that didn't bother me. Yeah, that Peacemaker season 2 that we're getting next season is a part of the DC universe. And I'm like, okay, well, that would make season 1 a part of the DC universe. So it was kind of weird in that sense that we're starting over, but we're not. But we're starting over just with James Gunn properties, which is also hilarious in his own right. But I'm not bad at it because, like I said before, I enjoyed those two properties. I enjoyed the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. So we're off to a good start, I guess you could say. And to address it head on, first scene of this show, I thought was pretty smart. The reason that I had kind of pushback on it is if we're starting over, we're starting over. But now I know we're not really starting over. And that's where I was like, oh, okay, so what is truly canon? Okay, we know that the Suicide Squad is canon, but with that being said, is Batman v Superman canon? Is you know what I'm saying? Is the Justice League or Zack Snyder's Justice League canon? Are we cherry picking? Or are we just gonna cherry pick things? But that's where I was kind of like scratching my head to start it all off. But I get it. I understand. Um, the voice talents involved in this show, I think it was perfect casting. This was every voice fit the character, and especially David Harbour, who I'm. It seems like I'm talking about him like he's the star. He's not really the star per se, but I just loved his take on Frankenstein or Frankenstein monsters or whatever he's called in the show, because they never really called him by name. But I think his name is Eric Frankenstein. But he is Frankenstein with a twist. And I love the little spin that they gave that character. Like I said, I didn't follow these characters in the comics. The only one I know of from the comics is Rick Flag. And so everybody else, I'm learning like everybody else. I'm gonna learn like the casual viewer is learning as well, and that's good. Sometimes I like to be surprised or not have an expectation on a character, after reading comic books about them or seeing them on animated series or in films. You get a perception of how that character should be or how they have been played. But when you're going in it fresh, not knowing anything about them, it gives you kind of a deeper appreciation because this is your first exposure to them. I mentioned Rick Flag, so we might as well dive into Rick Flag, who is portrayed in this show by Frank Grillo, who will also play him in live action in the Superman film that comes out next year. But Rick Flag, and you may be like, well, they recast Rick Flag from the Suicide Squad movie, where if you remember, that Rick Flag was murdered by Peacemaker, nonetheless. And this is Rick Flag Sr. in this show, and that's the little nugget that they connected this show with those two properties. Frank Grillo, this is cool coming out of Frank Grillo. This is a different Frank Grillo. I'm used to seeing Frank Grillo as this just tough, grizzled, action butt kicking type fella, which he is in the show still, but he has a humorous side, a soft side, and all this. I like that, and it came through in his voice performance. I deeply enjoyed it. I enjoyed all the voice actors here. The animation style, I liked it, didn't love it. And I don't know to say that's a knock or not, but it's just like, it, it it didn't do anything special. I guess I'm spoiled now. I'm after the Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse style of animation, and different animation styles that we've seen since then, since that movie has came out. It really took animation to another level. This is pretty much your average animation style. It's nothing special. It's not bad animation, but it's nothing spectacular. And so in that regard, it's kind of like, okay, it's fine. you know it's fine. And now another character that I forgot to mention is Weasel. Weasel is from the Suicide Squad as well, and being reprised by Shane Gunn, the brother of James Gunn. And but yeah, he's a rollover from the DCEU. And so that was also another little nugget that we are cherry picking from that previous universe that doesn't exist. But yeah, I think this is a really good show. You know, it kind of throws you off. I thought we was gonna dive straight into the action, but they had a smart device to kind of give origin stories that take place in present time, with flashbacks and, the way the story is going, how characters will flashback, just certain ones, because like I said, it's just 2 episodes. We're going to get more going forward. But in these first 2 episodes, we get a couple of characters that we get flashbacks of, and it's very interesting how the story plays out that way. I'm really intrigued. It I can care less about the action. They had action. There was action in both episodes, and these are fairly short episodes. I mean, both episodes I don't think were 20-30 minutes each. You can get through them in about an hour for sure. Very quick episodes, but very, very entertaining. I think Creature Commandos will be a good watch going forward. I don't see where it's anything to get excited for this new universe going forward. That's the other knock, or the major knock I have. But that's no fault to this show. It's kind of an odd choice to be the quote unquote opening act of this universe. You would think you would start off with one of the big three, Superman, Wonder Woman, or Batman. And I know we've done that to death, and I understand the strategy behind it because we've done it to death. Let's start off with these lower tier characters. Introduce the world around our big Justice League characters. Makes sense. That way when the Justice League come into play, we know what's going on in the world. And like I said, it all makes sense. But these characters are pretty odd. These are so out of the box characters that I would say 80% of people watching have no idea who they are. But nonetheless, I think this show is worth the watch. It is so far so good. I'm not going to rate them because it's just the first 2 episodes. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out as Creature Commandos drops on Max every Thursday. Can't wait to dive into the rest of them. I would love to know, what did you think of the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos from DC Studios? Did you enjoy it? Are you excited that the DCU is starting this new universe and we're off and running, in this, what did James Gunn call it? Chapter 1. It's not sagas or phases, I should say, like the MCU do. They have their phases. But DC is going to be chapters, I believe, and this is chapter 1, God and Monsters. And so this is definitely monsters here. So I would like to know, what are your thoughts? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also comment on social media. Just search for the KB Radio Network on all social media platforms. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and check out all of our content on the channel, and like this video as well. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently checking out the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of the first 2 episodes of Creature Commandos, the brand new DCU animated show on Max. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.